Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Q&A with Whitey. Thanks so much for joining us. This morning, we're going to have a great conversation with some wonderful people from all around the world, mind you. But beforehand, I think before we get too far, we've got to make sure you need to have your cup of coffee ready. New mug this week, or kind of new. So have your coffee ready, and of course, my wonderful wife has been busy cooking again. I've got these wonderful blueberry muffins and this healthy muesli bar, I guess to call it. It's full of honey, nuts, and blueberries as well, and God knows what else. So all very, very diabetically friendly and Heart Foundation friendly. So we'll survive for another day. Anyhow, thanks for joining us. Get ready for a wonderful hour with some really wonderful people. Before we get there, we better thank our sponsors for supporting us. They are wonderful people who are doing great things for our industry and great things for our association, so we can make sure we can deliver all this content to you free of charge. So thanks to ALI, Bluestone, Finstro, Prosper, Lend, Suncorp, On Deck, Pepper Money, AAMC, Strive Financial Insurance Advisor Net, Credit Fix Solution, and Trailbook Loans. Thank you very much for your support. Now, our guest this morning, I'd like to introduce and make welcome to you Todd Duncan, all the way live from the USA, Rebekah Smith, who is our resident psychologist expert, if I guess I can put that title to it, in our wellness conversation this morning. And of course, Renee Blethyn, who's from Suncorp, but Renee does a great piece with the FBAA in the wellness sector, as well as some other things that we'll find out more about today, as we'll learn a little bit about all of this. So welcome everyone, join us and let's have a chat. G'day Beck, how you going?
Good morning, lovely to be here.
Great, Todd, my man, how are you?
Hey Whitey, how are you? I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite.
Good man. No, pleasure. And Renee, welcome as always. I love that view out your window. Very corporate.
No, I'm in
nice.
Our office in Brisbane Square for a change instead of working from home. So nice to have this in the background instead of the usual things that I'm trying to move around to make look professional.
That's all right. They're saying we're going to get about 26 degrees here today, so it'll be a nice warm day in old Brisbane town today. Very nice. Hey, before we get into the conversation, Todd, I do want to thank you. It's where are you at the moment? You're in Las Vegas, eh?
I'm in Las Vegas where it's 40 Celsius. Yeah, a little warm.
You can have that. We know what that's like. I don't want it.
I know it.
But thanks for joining us. It's nighttime where you are, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know how busy you are and how much traveling and stuff you do and speaking engagement. So, man, thank you so much for taking a piece of your day out to chat to us Aussies on this wellness subject today. So,
you know
thanks.
what?
I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
No, thanks. And ladies, of course, we've got to have someone to make up for this face. So thank you for adding the beauty to the conversation, but also too, more so the intellectual piece. So in all fairness, I mean, yeah, I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say to us today. And I think it's going to be a great privilege to understand more as to where you guys come from and where that conversation takes us. So I might just start and Todd, I'll come back to you. Todd, you're a preeminent leader in the conversation of trust around the world and how that applies into sales environments like mortgage broking. You're well known over here in Australia. You've done the circuits. You've worked with some pretty powerful companies here in Australia. Do you want to give us a little bit of a background on all of that and the sort of people you deal with?
Yeah, thanks. And really great to join you guys for the conversation. I love Australia. I love the people in Australia. I love the entrepreneurism. I love the business vibe. It's just very, very cool. Yeah, I started out at university and I got into real estate and lending and had the very good fortune of having a mentor that was very successful. And I trusted him, and he trusted me to do what he asked me to do and what he shared with me to do. And lo and behold, about 12 years later, I had settled about 6,000 loans for families that were buying real estate. And about halfway through that journey, my company had asked me if I would train the 10 new loan consultants that they had hired, and I did that. And then a couple months later, trained the 10 new loan consultants that they hired, and a couple months after that. So I was still doing my brokering and still doing all the loans, but I got this kind of taste of what it was like to help others win. And I thought about that mentor that had helped me win, and I thought, you know, what a great life. I can make a decision now to transition to maybe an even greater calling, something that's really in my gifted zone. And I began with that outreach to help the mortgage and real estate community figure out how to accelerate trust, how to develop deep connection with people. And I look back now, and we've got 18 books out and 5 million clients, and you know, high trust is everywhere in the world. And I pinch myself every day that I've had this opportunity to help people win and to help people build relationships that last a lifetime. And it's been a joy watching some of the companies that in the late 90s and early 2000s over in Australia that I had a chance to be part of, and to see them still just dominating today and accelerating. And I just, you know, I wake up every day and I just go, who's next? Who do I get the pleasure of impacting? And, you know, who can come along for this ride? But, you know, given the world we're in, Whitey, and given just all the global governments and given a lot of the politicization that's going on, I think trust it's really a thing to be reckoned with today. It's something that you have to pursue hard. It's something that can evaporate with one wrong decision, one wrong call, and you got to guard it. You got to guard it at every stage of every relationship you have.
Unquestionably, and we saw that over the last couple of years with the process of our Royal Commission and what happened when trust was breached, and the consequences of that. And I'm hoping that we've all learned huge lessons from that piece of history, and we need to really understand that trust journey, I think, far better, well, and from an Australian point of view, far better than what I think we know. You know, I think I've got a feeling we think we're pretty good. I've got a feeling we're not so good. There's a lot to be learned. It doesn't matter where you are on your journey, but that trust piece is huge, incredibly important. Yeah. So, Becca, I might jump to you. So, tell me the background to your journey. Have you always done what you do today, or what was your journey to get to where you are today?
Certainly have not always done this, Whitey. I've been working as a psychological fitness consultant for the last 3 years, but prior to that I was working as a physiotherapist, and before that I was working in research, and before that I was struggling with mental illness. And actually through a lot of my journey within my research career and my physio career, I was struggling with mental illness, and that's really what inspired me to make the shift into psychological consulting, because I had to do so much work for myself over the years of learning how to cope better, learning how to function better, learning how to feel better in life. And I feel like I was very, very blessed with the people who were around me and with the information that I had access to. And I feel as though my journey has been one of learning strategies and, speaking of trust, learning to trust myself as well as others, so that now I can bless other people with the same information and skill set and trust that I learned for myself.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, look, there's one rule. Every year at Are You OK Day, I choke and I cry. I've got a hanky. If any one of you make me cry, guess what? You'll be in for it. My wife has prepped me. So don't do it. You already got me close to the edge. That's beautiful.
I'm already starting to go there, and all I have is my shirt.
That's all right. We're all ready. That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, Renee, what's your story and background? And obviously, you are very well renowned throughout the entire mortgage broking industry for what you do in the broker space on behalf of Suncorp. But what's your journey been like to bring you to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting listening to Todd and Rebekah. There's definitely similar themes in my story. So the role I do, I think, is probably a little bit boring in terms of its fundamental responsibility. What I'd rather talk about is why I do it. And the reason that I work in financial services and work in the broker channel is due to my experience that I had when I was in my late 20s and got divorced, which was definitely not in my plan. And through that process, had to work through what happened with the financial settlement. And what I didn't understand was how much information and support I needed. And whilst you're emotionally under pressure, that's really difficult. And Rebekah, you talked about the tools and resources. I had no idea what I needed and what would get me through, and was shocked by some of the behaviours of people when it comes to things around money. And when I say things, I'm talking about fear, the belief systems that sit behind it. And so what that experience did is it embedded just how important it was for me to understand information that I could have had and how that would have played out differently. And I am talking about money, but you both mentioned trust, and because I didn't have that information, I didn't trust my own decisions, and I didn't feel confident, and it absolutely had an impact on my mental health and well-being, which I didn't realise at the time because I was just trying to cope. And I'm really passionate about the role that we play in the financial services industry to help people when it comes to the financial decisions. And it's not about making $1 million, it's about having the information to make the decisions that are right for you, because when you get that part right in your life, there are so many other parts that come together, and having trust in making those decisions builds trust for you in other areas of your life. And I've had other experiences with mental health with other people in my life, and that I grew up with a father who was quite strict, and his belief was it's just will and determination that gets you through, and that's actually not. It really helps, but mental health is something very different to that, and you can't actually tackle that just with a decision. There are tools that you need based on your unique situation, and what I am passionate about is our partnership with the FBAA and being able to provide information to brokers so that when they are servicing themselves, their families and their customers, they can identify where a person needs help, because money is often the starting point for getting someone back on track. So that's just a little bit about or the wellness piece.
Thank you so much for being open to share that to everyone. And just on the financial piece, it's not only, I guess, is it a part of the piece of getting things back on track, but it's also a part of the crack that starts a journey with challenges in mental health. I mean, from a financial services industry, I guess we're probably a little bit more sensitive to that side of it. But you can see when there is financial stress in the family, there becomes other issues, or whether it be anxieties and depressions that set on because they're not dealing with that piece of their life as well. And I guess it was part of, I guess I'll talk about, why we've come to this point in these conversations. And it all started for me many years ago, about 5 years ago now, when I had corporate friends of mine come to me who are in all sorts of enormous distress and falling into depression. And one person in particular came and, we got them come and stay with us on a regular basis. And still today, that person accredits us basically with saving their lives. Not that that's what we're doing, but really, really bad shape, bad way, this person. But in the same token, my wife, Janet, constantly was suffering with depression because my stepdaughter has special needs, and as she's gotten older, the impact of her intellectual impairment has become more and more challenging. None so like it is at the moment with a 13 going on 14-year-old girl that has other challenges as well. But Janet was in and out of depression. I could see what she was suffering from. I had high-powered corporate mates that were struggling like you wouldn't believe, and then I found all these other people that were having problems and so on, that from a mental wellness position, and then their business was being impacted, and this obviously wasn't Suncorp, so I'll take this away from that conversation. But there were lenders that were actually starting to question people's ability to hold accreditations with them and to do business. So it was then starting to impact the business. And I said to myself, no, that's not right. This is a point in time that we need to be helping people get through, not actually throwing them deeper into this black hole, because that's where it's going to push them to. And that's when I, rather bullishly, I guess, self-titled myself as the industry ambassador for mental health awareness in this industry, because no one else was. And this wasn't just an FBAA conversation. This was a problem for our entire industry, and basically somebody had to step up and say something, if I can put it that way. And I look at the journey over all those years of having that conversation. It was very taboo back then. I look at the industry today, and Renee, you could probably touch on this. It's a commonplace conversation. There are aggregators, there are brokers, there are lenders. People are doing things for mental health in our industry that a handful of years ago, they wouldn't have even contemplated. And I think it's such a great thing, but it's such an important thing because, you know, it's something that hits all of us, and we're all sitting here today, and everyone who's listening, this is all unscripted, so no one's sort of really overly prepped for where we're going, but you know, it hits all of us. And I've been very vocal, and part of my ambassadorship as such to industry was talk about my own challenges, and I've suffered from severe anxiety attacks for quite a long time. And once when we're in the middle of elections, so going back into last year, and there is a significantly important meeting being held with the Labor Party on a Sunday, and I was sitting in the lounge chair out in the other room, couldn't get out of it. The anxiety just hit me, and it was like there was this lead weight, and I was going nowhere, and I couldn't work out how I was going to get through it. I eventually did and got to the meeting, and that was actually the beginning of me understanding how to deal with anxiety. Even this weekend, you know, on Sunday, I was sitting there and I thought, oh shit, here we go again. Why is this happening? But I managed to mentally get myself back into the position. And Rebekah, you might have some views on this as a professional in the sector, but for me, to get myself out of these really bad pits of anxiety is to get up and do something I'm not doing. It doesn't matter what I do, it's just got to be different to what I'm doing right now, because where I am right now is where I'm stuck. So I've got to basically get off my ass and do something else. And it could be anything. And go out and walk around the house, go out and, you know, put the bins out. It doesn't matter what it is. Go out and get on the treadmill, go out and do something. What, I don't know, am I just fortunate that's just a stumbled way out, Rebekah, or is there's something more fundamentally important to it than that?
Well, I think you've stumbled across something that's actually very profound, you know, by accident, because that's what we call a state shift. So what you're doing in doing something different is that you're physically moving your physiological state, and that helps to also shift your psychological state. So that's one of the strategies for anxiety, which can be really useful when that anxiety is hitting in the short term. And we also talk about those kind of long-term preventative strategies as well. So for many people, it's being able to sit in calmness and to be able to, when you're not feeling anxious, practice feeling calm, so that that calmness is more accessible later on as well. It's kind of like building a stillness muscle in your brain. But at the time when anxiety is hitting, you can't necessarily access it right away. So some of those strategies around shifting state can be really powerful.
So are you talking about with the longer strategy, is that more of a meditation style of practice, or is it something else again?
Yeah, it can be meditation, it can be mindfulness, it can be simply going for a walk in nature, you know, whatever stills your mind. Something that surprises a lot of people when I talk about mindfulness is that for certain types of anxiety, mindfulness is not useful. And for some people, it can be what we call contraindicated, not advised at all. For instance, if somebody has obsessive compulsive disorder and their anxiety is coming from that sense that everything has to be just so, focusing more and actually using mindfulness to focus can make them overly focused because their problem is already based on too much focus. So for some people, mindfulness and meditation doesn't necessarily work, and they really need to be speaking to a professional, a psychologist, a counsellor about some other strategies that they can use, which might be around distracting with positive emotion, you know, maybe cultivating gratitude, or, you know, maybe playing with a dog is going to be a better strategy for them rather than mindfulness. And we're all wired a little bit differently, aren't we?
I think that's a really important piece. I think, yeah, that the one size doesn't fit all, like that gets a bit cliche, but we are all wired a little bit differently, and I think we've got to be open to maneuver with that in mind, knowing that fundamentally it is okay not to be okay as such. But yeah, that's interesting. And I suck at meditation, let me tell you. I've tried, I'm not good. I've got to do something else. Todd, hey, mate, you are a highly successful international businessman, bottom line, right? Has it always been an easy journey for you?
It hasn't. And I listen to Rebekah and Renee, and I think back to a moment in time when I was 16 and I was at a camp for the summertime, and I was trying to qualify to be a worker for that camp. And you had to do a lot of pretty heavy physical kind of stuff to get into qualifying. And I didn't make it. And my mom drove up the hill from our house. It was a couple-hour drive. You could tell that she was angry that I didn't make it. And for the 2 hours on the way home, she made me feel like I was the biggest failure on the planet, and it really hurt. It was a really, really deep wound that took a lot of years to kind of get through. But I think what it did is it gave me perspective around, I think what everybody has to deal with is you are not a failure. That the idea of failure is simply the other side of success. And like we have hot and we have cold and we have dark and we have light, we have success and we have attempts at success, which actually prove a different way to do it. And I started thinking about the difference between hopefulness and hopelessness. And I started thinking about fearing more or fearing less. And somehow or another, that mentor in my life told me that I could be anything that I put my mind to, and I could be anything that I chose to be, and that I could choose my story. And I could choose whether or not I wanted to tunnel failure and that wound from my mom into something positive, or did I want to have that lock me down and cause me to be, less than I have been given a gift to be. And it's not been easy. It's not been easy, but it's been purposeful. And I think, the idea of we are a miracle. Every single one of us is a miracle. There's not another Whitey. There's not another Rebekah. There's not another Renee. There's not another Todd. We are a one of a kind. And we have to, somehow or another, we have to choose to see that we have the opportunity for a level of our best life. And it's not always easy, especially in mental depression. I've had 7 friends of mine in 7 years that have jumped off buildings because of financial pressure and died. And I've had 3 people that have committed suicide in their car that had all the money in the world, but were not happy and were not fulfilled. And just last week, I got a text message from a broker in Melbourne at 2 a.m. in the morning who couldn't sleep. And he was texting me because he's somebody that I know. And I texted him back. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, my time, or 11, something like that. And I said, so what are you worrying about? And he made this long list of things that were occupying his mind in the middle of the night. And I said, the only thing that you can do is you can put perspective around what you're worrying about. And you can ask yourself a question: how much of this that I am worrying about is actually going to come to fruition? And Rebekah knows this, that over 90% of what we worry about is never going to happen. And maybe 6 or 7% of what we worry about is stuff that we really have to pay attention to. And I really, when I got that text, I was thinking, the world suffers from the challenge of hope, and the challenge of a better life, and a challenge of believing in themselves at some level that they have potential. And I think we have to, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a trained psychologist, but I've been in front of enough people to know that when you get clear on your purpose, when you get clear on your gifts, when you get clear on why you're doing what you're doing, it kind of pulls you from wherever you are: negative, depressive, doubt, fear, all of that stuff. And you can actually take fear, which for most people is negative, and you can turn that into a very positive emotion. You can actually look at those 4 letters and they stand for feeling excited and ready. When you know what you're going to do has purpose, and when you know what you do has impact, you're not afraid. You're excited and you're ready. And all it takes for most people that have challenges with hope and depression is a series of wins, at some level, a series of victories. My youngest son texted me years ago. His mom died, my wife died from cancer, and both my boys were motherless at the age of 13 and 11. And he texted me one day that he felt like tying weights around his legs and jumping into the ocean and dying. And when it got that close to home, I started to realize that nobody is insulated from the pressures of the world and the pressures of trauma and the pressures of wounds, and they have to heal at some level. And I don't know prescriptively how to take people into the healing mode, but I know that positivity plays a big role, hope plays a big role, and victories play a big role.
Yeah, the one thing I love from that, I mean, bar everything you were saying, but I love how small the world is. That here you are in America helping out a broker in Melbourne, Australia. I mean, how cool is that?
It's unbelievable. It's a gift.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's a gift. So I texted him the next night at 2 a.m, his time to wake him up.
Yeah, that's fair call. So, hey, Renee, with all that you went through, how did you wind up trying to deal with the trust issues and all the complications that you were battling with at that time? What is it that got you through all that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not just one thing, I think, and we touched on it before in the conversation that we're all different, and finding what works for you and what speaks to you. And I think we all have a different way of putting it, but I think what I learnt as the most important thing was to trust that inner voice. And I always thought the inner voice was going to be really loud. And if you think of the old movies where like Moses was parting the sea and he had his staff and it was this creepy. I thought that was the inner voice, but of what I've learned is the inner voice can often be like really quiet. And so, and I had so much else going on that it just didn't have a way through. And it was a series of getting some experts to help me. It was getting my health in balance, and sleep, diet, nutrition could not be more important. And that's the first thing that I do when I'm feeling out of balance now. They're the first things that I just do a self-check on to get in order, because one night's sleep can make one good night's sleep can make a massive difference to perspective. And it was just a range of different information, but also experiences with other people, and that similar to what Todd was saying about know your purpose and your value and what you're trying to give, actually involving yourself in the community and doing something with what you've learned. That's been something that has really helped heal that journey for me.
Huge.
Yeah, and interestingly, you got no idea what's on my screen over here as to my tips, and you just give me a perfect segue to the next segment. You don't even know it. That's great. Because what I wanted to talk about is our wellness just a mental state of mind, or is there a physical component to this, which you've obviously just touched on a bit there? And I might ask Rebekah to see if you've got some further thoughts. So I know from a sleep point of view, and I was never big on this, and a part of the FBAA's conversation, which now involves Rebekah in the mental wellness piece, but also Chelsea Pottinger as well. And Chelsea got me onto the Aura Ring, which is all a piece of tech. It's all a piece of tech there that records my sleep habits and so on. And I've learned a lot from that. And exactly what you were saying, Renee, is that if I get a really good night's sleep, the way I feel the next day is remarkably different. And I never knew really what was impacting what. I mean, Rebekah, is there more science to all of this? Is it the physical component as well as the mental component, and looking at sleep and the calmness aspect? It seems to be a complicated minefield. How do you professionally deal with all that? How do you deal with it with yourself? I mean, you've got to self-diagnose yourself. You've got a really tough gig.
That's a great question. And I think for so long in our world, we have treated the mind and the body as separate components. And I think we still have a dichotomy where we separate the physiology from the psychology. And in my life, how I deal with that is that 20 years ago, my mum joined a gym. And she wasn't feeling confident enough to go on her own. She was severely overweight and she wanted some moral support. So at 17, I joined the gym with her. And that was the first time for me that there was a crack of light through the depression that I'd been experiencing for a number of years. It was moving my body. And what I've learned since then is that in moving our bodies, we release a whole bunch of chemicals in our brain as well as in the rest of our body, like the endorphins. We start to shift our balance of dopamine and serotonin. When we're exercising with other people in a group fitness setting, we often get a hit of oxytocin as well, which is important for our inflammatory response, important for our immunity, and it's very important for human connection. And just feeling good, you know, oxytocin gets released when you cuddle your cat. And
I saw your cat a moment ago.
Yeah.
I did too.
One out of 3, he's wandering around. There might be soon. And so there are these physical correlates of well-being that we can't ignore. And when I discovered this accidental love for group fitness, I also realized about myself that I didn't have a great degree of discipline to keep going. And so I decided to become an instructor. So for the last 17 years, I've been teaching group fitness. And that for me is a huge part of my well-being. It's something that keeps me structured and motivated to keep up my physical movement. But I think even more importantly, it connects me with community, and it keeps me with people. And that social bonding and that sense of belonging that I have from group fitness then feeds my psychology as well as my physiology. So I don't think that we can necessarily talk about the mind without talking about the body, and vice versa.
That's interesting. My wife is very big on her Apple Watch, plug for Apple, not, but anyhow, because of that fitness tracking component that's in it. I don't have one. But this thing does a little bit of that as well. But I know with Janet managing her challenges with depression, the more focused she is on that, it seems to help her manage in a much better fashion the other challenges that are being happening. And I've never really thought too much, to be honest with you, about the correlation between them both. It was just something that's come up as we started to talk about this. Yeah, Todd.
Let me jump in, Pete, because we just completed a 16-hour series that was called Connect, and Rebekah mentioned the idea of connecting with oneself. And one of the studies that we went through is there is an absolute correlation between health and wealth and health, and not that the wealthy people are always healthy people, and not that healthy people are always wealthy people, but there is a correlation. When you look at 82% of Americans and 86% of the world population and 26 domesticized countries that have financial stress, it's the #1 cause of everything else in their life that has some level of physical ailment, including mental stress, financial stress, relationship stress, all of that. And I think that, when you look in the mirror, you see something, right? You see yourself. And when you're under financial stress, there's all kinds of dominoes that get set up that affect your health. And it can be overeating, it can be drinking, it can be drug dependency, it can be, all kinds of negative behaviors. And yet when you get healthy, you have a different kind of respect. You start losing weight, you start feeling better. I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm 5 years cancer free. But when I stared cancer in the eyes, it was like, okay, I'm in pretty good shape, but I got to really mindfully look at what am I going to do to make sure that I buffer that in my life. And there's a correlation between that. When you look at people that in the US anyway, there's a study by the New York City Urban Institute, and they looked at people that were making less than $35,000, and they looked at people that were making more than $100,000, and they did a correlation that the lower the income, the higher the rates of suicide, depression, and hopelessness. And it was just a straight up correlation with about 250,000 people. So it's a very rich test. So we tell people that the healthier you get, the wealthier you get. The wealthier you get, the healthier you get, generally speaking. And that when you feel good about you, and you feel good about the stability that you have in your life, and you realize that the behaviors that allow you to earn more money and to be more fiscally responsible are the same behaviors that bring you health and self-respect, then those things come together and you end up having a really beautiful angle towards the balancing act of health and fitness and wellness. And I think the two are absolutely 100% correlated.
Yeah, and it unquestionably is, from my point of view, appearing to be the case. I know that when I went through the Royal Commission, so if I go back now over the last couple of years, and industry doesn't necessarily see all that you're doing and generating, although they had some vlogs by me done at 10:30 at night, could see how shattered I was at one stage. A different story, but yeah, through that period, it just talked about the health point of view. I'm doing something like 220 domestic flights a year. I'm in and out of meetings, you don't eat properly, and all of a sudden I'd blown out another 5 kilos. And all my life I've struggled with keeping my weight right, and except when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to teach martial arts, and through that period, my fighting weight was about 10.5 stone, and I was just sort of stick thin, wide, and ready to go. These days, not quite so young, and certainly not quite as fit. But putting on weight and trying to get rid of it's a pain in the ass trying to do. Now, I recently have gone through,
literally.
I've recently gone through, literally. I've gone through, over the last few years during COVID, it's been really good for me. I started a bit of a program. I stuck to it because I was mentally ready to. It was the same when I gave up smoking. People used to say to me, oh, you should give up smoking, it's bad for you. Yeah, but you know what, I actually enjoyed it. I always enjoyed smoking until I got to the point, there was one, I was going to say Christmas, it wasn't, it would have been a January or February, many years ago now. I was in Perth and I walked outside to have a cigarette and I could hardly breathe. It was that hot and humid. I got to give this shit up, came home and I have a thing mentally, I just can't throw something in, I need to finish it. So if there's a packet of biscuits, I got to finish it. I'm not going to throw it in the bin. I can't mentally cope with that. It's maybe OCD or whatever it is. But so I finished that packet of cigarettes, where I finished, never picked one up since. That was about 8-9 years ago, I think it was. But it was the same with weight. I was ready to do it. And out of the 5 kilos I put on through COVID, I've dropped 4. But it was that regiment, that structure of getting on the treadmill in the other room, controlling my diet, getting rid of the junk and shit out of my diet and all that sort of stuff, and focusing back in. And the way I felt afterward, and still, going through that, it was far more energized. And that then are things I think that's helped me when anxieties have set in, to actually help me to pull myself out of it rather than spiraling down further. Yeah. Renee, I wanted to ask you, have you seen much in this area of brokers around Australia struggling with mental health or signs of it in what you see with all your work and travels and people you connect with, or in the banking and financial services sector?
Yeah, it's interesting. We have, I think there was more conversation about it through the Royal Commission and the impacts of that final report and the initial findings, and there was real concern shared amongst all of us within the industry, and that's when the conversation really started for us in making sure that our teams were, what we found is that our BDM team were actually having incredibly difficult conversations with brokers who are contemplating exiting the industry and just breaking down on the phone when something quite small in reality was going wrong. Their reactions were out of kilter with what was actually happening, and we were finding that we were needing to provide extra support to our team so that they could cope with the responses that they were receiving. We did have a couple of incidents with threats that were made within our lending origination team that we managed at the time. So we've definitely seen a range of reactions, and that's why we've supported programs that are starting the conversation, because what we know is that the broker is sort of stuck in the middle here. They've got their own stresses to cope with because of the amount of pressure and change in our industry. And then they're also servicing families who are experiencing difficulties with financial situations, and never more important than right now. And we know that brokers, whilst they're specialists in it, they can't take it all on, and they need a break from it. And they also need to know that it's okay for them to not be okay themselves. So we've definitely seen that there's different levels of conversation about it, and there's within the actual professional development program that's delivered across the industry, there's more and more sessions that are around the health and wellness piece. And I actually saw Kirsty, you mentioned before, she spoke yesterday at a PD day, and Anthony Hart, who spoke for you at the FBAA conference this last year, I thought was just phenomenal. And I've been able to share his story with our insurance business, and they're looking at having him talk to their audience. So I think we'll start to see some more momentum, definitely, because it seems like it's a conversation that people are more comfortable to have.
And I always wonder, and Todd, just for your understanding, Anthony Hart, now, Renee, you might be correct me a bit on this because I'm not quite sure on the exact data. He jumped off a 25-story building, whatever it was, and survived. He was out to commit suicide. Yeah, and he talks about his story. Yeah, it's just powerful. Oh, I just got all goosebumps.
The universe wasn't done with him yet.
Oh, shit, no. Yeah, imagine that. He hit an awning or something which broke his fall, but he was out whoosh, off the edge and tells his story today. It's just mind-blowing stuff. It is. Hey, Renee, do you think it is that with what you're seeing, is it as much of it's always been there, but we're more open to talk about it rather than necessarily an increased explosion and escalation of challenges with mental health? So I see some of the Beyond Blue data that came out not long ago saying that, principally the mental health within men, it was a men research piece, and attempted suicide, it was all increasing and going up. I always wonder whether or not, because we're more open to talk about it, there's greater transparency so we can understand it better versus necessarily a problematic trend. Do you have any handle on that?
I do. I mean, there's a variety of different research on it, and just what we're seeing as an organisation currently, we know that unfortunately, with what families are experiencing with COVID, what we're actually seeing more instances of within our customer assistance team who are helping financially vulnerable customers, or our hardships team, is actually the frequency of domestic violence. And I know that the Lifeline organisation has seen a 70% increase in requests for help from Australians to help with domestic violence. And domestic violence is often has a link to mental health and wellbeing within the household. I think, Rebekah, you'd probably have more stats that you could share. I know that with the work that we've done with Rural Aid and the farmers within Australia, more commonly now the support that they need to offer to those farmers is actually financial counselling and mental health and wellbeing sessions, rather than just helping with the bales of hay for the farm that they have. So I definitely think there's a combination of what is concerning is the dominance of males and the dominance of young people, that this does impact in our country and worldwide. And Rebekah, I'm sure you've got perspective on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're looking at over the last 20 years in terms of trends. I think that there's been much more of a tendency for people to be more open over the past 5 to 10 years. Certainly the conversation around mental health is becoming more widespread. So I think that the number of mental health concerns may have not necessarily risen a whole bunch over that time period, but there's been much more of it coming into the conversation and into the public sphere. And over the last few months of the pandemic, there's certainly some very strong statistics to show that mental health concerns are rising as well. So definitely supporting what you're saying there, Renee. Yeah, levels of distress are going up across the board.
Well, you almost said it verbatim. I just got a text message just sent from my Queensland State Manager, said that we've had a broker readmitted back into hospital for mental health here in Brizzy. Pressures have just gotten all too much. So it sort of validates that. Are you seeing similar things in the US, Todd? Are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that one of the things that is very interesting is that people have decided that vulnerability and authenticity in many ways is the pathway to starting to heal and starting to get health, and to admit that you have a challenge, or to admit that you're scared, or to admit that you're afraid. That vulnerability is actually where strength is found. And I think at some level, you know, everybody's broken. I mean, at some level, all of us have something that, you know, is not quite going according to plan. And I think what's happened is there's a recentering of really trying to understand priorities. There's a recentering and trying to understand that less is usually more often better than more. And that when busyness takes over without a sense of some control or some purpose, it can be the start of a trend towards negative interpretation, health, all those kinds of things. I think most people falsely relate busyness to success, and I don't think that's where we actually get our joy. I think we get our joy by doing less things that are more purposeful for a longer period of time. And I try to help people everywhere through our company understand that, you know, the 70-hour work week, the 80-hour work week, the 60-hour work week, you never get a plaque for that. And it rarely reflects in your mental health and your physical health. And it oftentimes reflects negatively in your personal off-the-job health with family, children, so on and so forth. So we try to get people very, very clear on, let's get honest. Let's admit where we have challenges. Let's be bold enough and brave enough to seek help. And let's reimagine what our life, our perfect life looks like. We're never going to be perfect, but what would I like to have on that landscape or that canvas of my choice, what I can control and what I can take power over, not what I can't control. And most of what happens to us, we can only control our response. But if I can control purposefully, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my day to look like? What do I want my family to look like? And I just start to move in some of those directions. Our coaching team helps people every single day with just these little decisions. You know, this art of compounding, Pete, is so important that every day, if we have a more positive experiences than negative, that compounds. And every day, if we have more negative than we do positive, that compounds. It's at some level, we've got to stop the insanity. We got to reach out for help. We got to be okay with not being okay. We got to be able to put a white flag up and say, I need help.
Yeah.
And there are enough people that will help you.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Beck, is it right that, and I believe it is, but you may have some more clinical aspect to this, that we tend to mentally over-inflate or over-exaggerate the problems in our mind, rather than, and I think Todd, you were saying, piece it down, and it's probably not as big an issue as what we think it is, but we turn it into some enormous beast that we just can't fight against. Is there a clinical aspect to that, or am I going the wrong direction?
Definitely correct. And, you know, Renee referred to that as well, you know, with some instances of people, you know, conflating issues. And there's a term that we use, which is catastrophizing. And it comes from it's one of the cognitive traps, cognitive biases that we can develop as people. So there are some traps that we naturally fall into, such as all or nothing thinking, where we tend to think of things in extremes, you know, oh, this always happens to me, or that's never going to work out. And, you know, there can be some things linguistically that we say to ourselves which aren't necessarily true. And one of those cognitive traps, again, is catastrophization and blowing things out of proportion, because the human brain has evolved with a negativity bias. So when I found that out, it was really life-changing for me, because it made me feel as though the negative talk that was going on in here, oh, everybody has that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm not a weirdo. There's nothing wrong with me. But we have a negativity bias in our brain, which means that we tend to put 5 times more emphasis on problems and negative things than we do on positive things, because from an evolutionary point of view, that kept us safe when we were evolving human beings. You know, if we focused on the problems, we were much more likely to see the predator in the grass. But now, in our modern lifestyle, it means that we tend to put the focus much more on the problems, which are not life-threatening, but the catastrophization that goes on in our brain, it triggers a fight or flight response within us that is exactly the same as if we were being hunted by a bear.
Yeah. Oh, so how do we deal with it? What's the answer to say, well, if you're in that, what do you do?
Yeah.
Besides get out a big steep and beat the shit out of someone.
Come on, Rebekah. Give it to us.
All right.
What do we do?
I've got the secrets of life right here.
Cool.
One of the steps is awareness. You know, it's developing the self-awareness to go, okay, these are the thoughts that I'm having, because we don't often take the time to step outside of our minds. We think being outside of our minds is a bad thing, but to be able to zoom out and look at our mental processes almost from an objective outsider perspective can be really useful to go, oh, that's the script that's running through my head. So that's the narrative. Okay. And then you can ask yourself, once you're aware of it, is that story true or is it not? And once you have got an understanding around that, then you can choose what you do with it. And one of the things you can do with it is to start to make your brain more sticky for good things. So there's a researcher called Rick Hanson who works in the field of neurophysiology and neuroplasticity, and he says that according to the negativity bias, that the human brain is like Velcro for negative, but Teflon for positive. So in other words, the good things just slide right out and we forget them.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we can do is to start to make our brains more like Velcro for the good things. And when we have a positive experience, to savor it rather than forget it. When we are having an interaction with somebody, look for their good aspects. Don't just think about what drives you crazy about them. When you're thinking about yourself, start letting go of self-judgment and start to embrace some self-compassion and think about the good aspects about yourself as well. So there's a range of different strategies around, you know, compassion, letting go of judgment, practicing gratitude, which we can take. There's 9 different steps that I teach people in the work that I do. So again, it's not a one size fits all, but there's multiple things that we can do to make our brains more sticky for the good.
You know what, Pete? I'm sorry, you and I had a chance with Deb when we were in Melbourne, and one of the things we do, to Rebekah's point, is wherever we are in the world, either Deb can do it to me or I do it to her, and we just do this. And we put up 3 fingers, and it is code for tell me right now 3 things that you're grateful for. And I'm telling you right now, as sure as I am that the sun's going down here in Las Vegas, that recenters positivity, it recenters your hope, and it just eliminates all the focus on the problems. And it's just random, wherever we are, just what are 3 things? You know the power of that, right, Rebekah?
That. I love that.
3 things. That's it.
And look, and although I'm a little bit conscious the clock is starting to get to the thin end of the wedge, but we're not finished yet. But I do want to say to everyone that's watching, you want to hear more from Rebekah? Rebekah, I'm so grateful that you're joining us on Are You OK Day, and I can see we're going to have many, many conversations in the future. So September, Are You OK Day, you'll hear more from Rebekah and learn some more secrets. Hey, I've got a question come through, and happy for everyone to be able to make comments, but it says here, we often have a personal trainer for fitness, for physical fitness. Is it a good idea to have a mentor or coach? And I guess for mental wellness, I guess even the mentors have a mentor. Come on, Beck, you're first up there.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, the big thing that I talk about is mental fitness and how can you train your fitness so that you can be more mentally fit. And also get that personal trainer for your mind before you get to a crisis. Like, don't just wait to go and get a personal trainer until you've been diagnosed with heart disease and diabetes. Do the exercise beforehand. And I have 2 therapists that I work with personally. So I see my psychologist probably on average every 4 to 6 weeks. Even when I am feeling good, even when I am doing great, I will go and see my psychologist because it's like a checkup for my brain. And I work with an art therapist as well. And I do fortnightly sessions with her. And I think it's so important to get that coach, mentor, counselor, psychologist, whoever it is, whatever kind of role they take and whatever profession they have. I think it's super important to have that mental personal trainer by your side.
I'm going to ask Renee and Todd the same thing, but I don't think any of us are going to challenge this one. So Rebekah,
respectfully though, I'm going to beat Rebekah because we're every Tuesday.
Yeah?
Every
Tuesday.
Because you need a different perspective. You know, you got to have a place where you can bring your stuff and work it out. And we all have stuff. I mean, I think that's the big breakthrough. We all have stuff. Nobody's insulated from the challenges that the world provides.
Just what you said about wounds, Todd, one of the big things that came up for me in listening to you was you were talking about wounds. And one of the things I talk about is how can we distinguish between a psychological injury versus a psychological illness? maybe we're not all as mentally ill as we think. Maybe we've just been mentally injured, and we need to recover from that, and we need to have those ways of healing.
That's beautiful. Yeah, well said.
I like that.
Well said.
Yeah. Renee, have you got any comments on that? If you're brave, they've got me a bit lost. So I'm just going to sit here and argue.
Yeah, both. Fully support both Rebekah and Todd. And the only thing I'd say is that often there's a lot of fear or shame around asking for help or guidance in this area. And the thing is that there's so much that you gain from actually just taking the plunge, even just doing it before you even have the conversation, but just actually taking that action for yourself sets up a chain of events that you can't possibly know is heading your way, and they're all positive. And it's a brave thing to do, but I can't encourage it enough. And there's so many, the great thing about today is there are so many free tools to help you get started to find what it is that you need. So I just encourage anyone who's kind of thinking, just do a little bit of research, talk to Rebekah, and just take the plunge, because there's only good stuff that's going to come your way.
I love that courage. I love courage. You know, the best way to have more courage is to be more courageous and to take that risk and to take that plunge, right? It's just, it's not working this way. You got any advice for me? You win.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, and Renee, you've done it to me again. I'm sure you're reading my other screen here, but so yeah, there's always more to be done. We've got some exciting things we're talking about, but without giving the game away, you're going to make a special announcement on behalf of Suncorp and FBAA at Are You OK Day as well, which is a part of that greater support. So I think we share the same visions and concerns, and I guess, and love for our industry and our industry family, that there's always more to do.
Yeah, there is. And it can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming, but I think today's conversation is just outstanding. I have to say, this is the most favourite thing I've done, I think, this year. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. It's so important, and I've learned even just listening to the three of you. So it's been awesome. And look, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but the fantastic thing is that we've got more in common than we have that separates us, and we're actually all trying to get to the same place. So yes, I'm looking forward to making that announcement, and all it is trying to just provide a range of tools so that a person will do something for themselves, whatever that is. So if we can provide lots of options, hopefully something will hit the mark to make that difference.
And that you're not alone on this journey. So, Todd, the same person was asking us a bit about the physical fitness and so on has also come back. So is there any tip for a mentor? And I guess the balance in that is you have business mentors, but you also think, and I've never thought about this, being honest with you, so my head's sort of darting around a little bit, but I guess is having that mentor that helps you with your mental wellness, and that then translates into your personal well-being. Am I on the right sort of path there? What do we look for to try and achieve that?
I don't think there's a downside to having people in your life that provide a level of accountability. And I think, accountability is oftentimes thought by many people to be negative, but it's the simple thing that helps a habit develop. It's a simple thing that helps a discipline, develop. And when you feel good about you will perform better in life. And so if that means having a trainer 3 days a week, if it means, realigning your schedule so that you have some time for personal fitness and just taking that kind of action. Jerome Butler was a psychologist at Harvard, and he said, you're more likely to act your way into feeling than you are to feel your way into acting. And I got to tell you, 70% of the time, I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. I don't want to get on my bike. I don't want to ride 50 miles. I don't want to go to the gym, but I'm never unhappy when that is over. And so it's that idea. No, it's that idea of of if you have accountability and you feel that what that accountability does for you is it makes you a better version of you, you will want more of that. And I think everybody listening to this has had momentum, right? We've had those periods in our life where things are working. And then we have those periods of time when things aren't working. And it's how do we get through the parts that aren't working so we can get back to the parts that make us feel good, that are working. And at some level, it takes other people. We cannot do it alone. I'm telling you right now, I cannot do what I do alone. I have coaches, I have mentors, we have a coaching company. Why don't you just do that? Why don't you just do that? And then we have a conversation and they go do it. And then they go, why didn't I do that? Right. Action is part of traction. You can't have traction without action.
God, I'm looking forward to getting you back here next year, Mr. Duncan. You just make a note in your diary, my son. Rebekah,
done.
Final thoughts on that? Any final thoughts or tips around that piece?
Don't do it alone. I definitely could not be here. I just want to reinforce that sense of belonging and absolutely reach out to other people. You know,
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. There's something that I was stuck in for a really long time, which is called dysfunctional independence, which stopped me from seeking help and made me think that I had to do everything on my own. And dysfunctional independence is a crock. Reach out to other people. Don't go it alone.
Amen.
Such wise words. Hey, I am out of time, but there is more coming, as Renee and I were mentioning in brief before. There's more work we're doing with Suncorp to help brokers across Australia. I have a new initiative that's coming out in the next couple of months that I'll be undertaking for people in the broking area, which is a little bit different, but I'm going to leave that mystique until then, together with an ambassadorship I'll be taking on as well, all there to help everyone in our industry, both here and around the world, because I'm fortunate that I reach through the International Federation that I chair many countries on these similar conversations, both within industry and on mental health. So some interesting journeys happening this week. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you have spoken on and shared with today. It's been a really special conversation, and I can't thank you enough. So Beck, Todd, Renee, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation, and Todd especially, thank you for staying up, and I know it's evening there where you are in the USA. Really appreciate that, mate. And we'll be talking soon.
Yes, okay, mate. And wonderful conversation, Rebekah and Renee, wonderful.
From my heart to yours.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it all. Okay, well, that was great. And I got close to having to use this, but I didn't. So I'll chuck that over there for another time. It's I love those conversations, and it's so important that we engage in understanding what wellness is all about. And I know we talk a lot about mental health, but it's so much more than mental health. And we've just seen that. All these people. Remember, you can rewatch this, or you've got friends that you feel that should have been watching this, or other people that want to watch this. It's all recorded. It's on our YouTube channel. It'll be up next week, and you'll be able to watch it and rewatch it then again. And next fortnight, we'll be coming along. It's going to be a little bit different. Goofy has just gone and hijacked old Mickey, who's usually sitting there, because I'm getting hijacked. I've got to go in for some surgery, unfortunately, and I'm going to be off for a couple of weeks, and it may take me a little bit to get back into the normal swing of things. So my state managers are hijacking Q&A with Whitey in 2 weeks' time, and they're bringing together a whole lot of business development managers from within our industry, from aggregators and lenders, to come and have a chat, a really raw chat around what they're seeing within the industry from their perspective as business development managers. So make sure you register for that for Thursday, the 27th of August, and be a part of that aggregated conversation with our state managers who'll be there to moderate it for me. It's going to be really brilliant. So be there or be square. You'll miss out. It'll be a really good conversation. And I'll watch the recording to make sure that they keep the tone of things at the right level. Don't worry about that. And of course, we need to finish off. Thank you to our sponsors. Again, we really appreciate all that you do. And remember, you will get an email after this. Your CPD code will be there, because you get an hour CPD for today. together with a little bit of feedback survey for us. We'd really appreciate you doing it. Thanks very much for joining us. I know we've gone a little bit over time. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate you being with us. It's been great. And I'll look forward to seeing you when I can get back in front of the screen again, but you'll certainly at least be hearing from me. Take care and speak to you soon. Bye for now.